Welcome back, everybody. It is Wins Above Fantasy, episode 203. And today is Thursday, February 12th. As you guys are listening to this on the podcast, I'm Van Burnett, joined as always by Steve Gisueli. Steve, we're in February. It's upon us. Pitchers and catchers reported, talking a little offline about, it's the excitement, but also you hear about the injuries that we haven't heard about for months. Just slowly starting to ramp up into draft prep, player preferences. And that is kind of the name of the game for tonight's episode, where we're looking at ADP position battles, finding little side-by-side comparisons that you might find in the draft room. And there's always that moment of like, wait, I kind of like both of these guys. Who do I go with? And it's just, rather than flipping a coin in the room, we'll flip the coin with you guys tonight as we talk through this. It's going to be a lot of fun, Steve. We got a lot. I think we got 13 pairings, so we're going to be moving a little bit faster than kind of the traditional WAF deep dives. But how's it going out there, man? Good to be back talking baseball with you.
Yeah, it's nice. I would say it's officially fantasy baseball draft season, right?
Yeah.
Super Bowl's
you're
over. It's we're now almost in the middle of February. It's nice that we get the shortest month right before March when it's like officially like home league draft season. But like now's the time to do, your money leagues, things like that, and then you finish up the last few with like your big home leagues in March, right?
And you're
We just did it.
shocked. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
shocked in your home league of how many
yeah.
guys you like that you got, because not everybody's, listening and reading the same exact stuff.
Yeah, for sure. But this is the time. And I think it's fun to do this sort of stuff. We have pretty solid ADP. Like it's not going to change too much. I know, like you're saying, like there's a bunch of injuries, and it's more like guys are ramping up. So one, like when you pick up that amount of intensity after just working out on your own all winter long, injuries are going to happen, especially on the pitching side. You see it, right? Like guys are always like, oh, why did this person wait till now for this to happen? It's like, well, they probably felt fine all off season, and the last thing we want to do is ruin their prep work and
Mm-hmm.
have their season over in November, right? They're going to try to fight through things and see how they feel, right? Like I saw there was an uproar about like Anthony Santander, right? He had a shoulder injury last year. Now he's out for the season, finally getting the surgery, right? It's like, well, he felt fine, is what he said throughout the offseason. Then he's picked up hitting last week and it was sore and needs the surgery. Like that happens a lot. You see the hamate bone, like guys start to swing, their bones break, and that's what happens. Like
Yeah.
as we start to play here, there's going to be more injuries. As managers speak, there's going to be injuries. Like I try to not overreact it, like to some of these things that
Yeah, it's part
happen.
of the
Like
part of the process.
yeah, and these guys that are having these injuries now, like okay, hopefully that means they're not going to break their hamate in July.
Mm-hmm.
They can't. They remove the hamate. So um
That one in
excited.
particular, without getting too much into
Yeah.
it, that one in particular, I recall in the last 4 or 5 years from following it close on this show, the hamate bone can be kind of a power sap one. So I
Yes.
think for Corbin Carroll, like in my mind, as soon as I heard that, I was like, all right, whatever I kind of believed in for his homer projection, maybe give it like a 0.6 multiplier or something.
I think that's fair. Same with Lindor too. I mean, the recovery is straightforward, right? It's 6 weeks. Like they remove the bone, they do the surgery, you're good to go. But there are guys that do say, "Hey, yeah, I didn't feel the strength. I didn't have the power until a few months after that." But that's probably a case by case basis, right? Like Francisco Alvarez had the surgery, I think, in April last year, and then had 11 homers and whatever, the 180 at bats in the second half, right?
Mm,
But that is the second half, right? I'm sure maybe he
sure.
did have another injury, I think, in between that, and that's just one fringe case. But I don't think it makes Corbin Carroll not a first rounder. Maybe you dock him a few picks. Maybe he's the beginning of the second round just because potentially there is some time lost in the beginning of the season, but I don't think it should be too much of a discount. Like, I'm still projecting Corbin Carroll to be one of the better players despite this news. He would have maybe been an interesting one now with the first two names, but I think he'll be behind those guys now considering the injury. But
Yeah. No, that's a
there's
nice
segue for
segue
you.
though, because we're going on kind of order of ADP, and again, for the most part, these are the same position players. So the first one we got is Ronald Acuna Jr. with an ADP, 7.6, and Julio is 10.3. So there is separation here, and I just wanted to break these two down, Steve, because they kind of where they once felt like very similar profiles in a way, even though, obviously Acuna's been around longer, so they've been kind of alternating in a sense. Now, when I look at these two guys, I think they kind of offer different fantasy profiles. And I think it's interesting that Acuna is kind of the chosen 3 picks sooner than Julio. So let's talk about it a little bit. Acuna last year, we saw the kind of a nice power bounce back where he just played in 95 games, but had 21 homers. So kind of, and then 9 steals. So he's kind of going at this 30-12 type of pace in terms of power speed. A 290 batting average was really nice. He had missed all of April, then he missed part of August with an Achilles. It's the power that has resurged. Also, the walk rate, interestingly, went up all the way up to 17%. But I'm just curious that Acuna, now that he's had the multiple torn ACLs, you look at the speed with a little bit more question. And of course, it came down last year. But the batting average as well was a 263 XBA underneath the 290. He's kind of, you're wondering if the next chapter of Acuna is going to continue to be more of like true power guy, and that speed will tail off, which I think you would trade for the durability. Whereas you look at Julio, who had a really nice bounce back after didn't really return on his ADP in 2024, a little bit of a down year by his standards, but last year, a nice bounce back, a 267 batting average, so 20 points below Acuna there, but 32 homers, 30 steals. So the speed was definitely the advantage for Julio. And then just the durability that we've now seen a handful of seasons where you can count on Julio to be 150 plus games. With Acuna, it seems like there's always something that's kind of, soft tissue in either leg. So that's where the speed kind of goes back and forth. So what do you make of these two? Because they're not separated by much. Acuna is a little bit older. The Braves have been up and down. It's just, I know Acuna is Acuna. He's got more like cachet to the name, but I think Julio is kind of back to what we were hoping he was a couple of years ago, right?
I think so. I think you know what you get with Julio. I think he's basically a lock for, upper 20s and homers, upper 20 steals conservatively. The average is, I think, pretty easily projectable at 275. That's essentially what he's been at for the last 3 years. Great player, first rounder. I have no problem taking him, but I'm not taking him over Ronald Acuna Jr. We saw what happened the second time that he came back, the first time that he came back from the ACL injury. The half a year that he came back, at first it was okay. This is kind of concerning. Is it all right? Is he fully back? And then the next year he had probably the greatest fantasy season, like outside of Ohtani, in recent memories, and that's with monster seasons from Aaron Judge. But when you put together 41 homers and pair it with 73 steals, and you hit 337, yeah. I'm not saying that he's going to get close to that. There are some massive outlier numbers there, specifically on the strikeout, in the strikeout department and swing strike rate. Like, he struck out 11.4% of the time that year. Every other year he's been in the mid-20s. That's what he was last year. I still think he will be in that area. That said, he's shown that he could still hit for a good average, even with those, mid-20s strikeout rates and a swinging strike rate that's, at not bad. It was at 12.6% last year. That was the worst of his career. I mean, yes, he did whiff a good amount last year, so maybe that's more in his game, but in the past, he hasn't swung and missed that much, and it hasn't resulted in like a debilitating strikeout rate. Even when you do have, a few swings and misses in your game, it's not the end of the world, essentially. Um, I don't know if there's the even like 35 steal upside, but Acuna steal bases on like will. Like he steals bases because he wants that number. That's how I like my fantasy players, guys that care about their stats and their numbers. And Acuna is gonna want 40 homers. He's gonna want 40 steals. Like that's just how he plays. It's amazing when he's fully healthy. He's one of the best players, one of the best fantasy players, I think, um, outside of like Judge and Otani. So yeah, no disrespect to Julio. I know that like in OBP leagues he takes a bit of a bump, but like despite all these great years that Julio's had, like his OPS is always around like 800. Like 853 his first year. He's been at 818, 734 in the down year in 2024. And even last year it was 798. So I know that's not the end all be all, especially in 5x5, and he produces a ton of value otherwise. But just give me Acuna. But I would not be too upset if I had to take Julio in the first round, though.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I mean, I guess I wonder with Acuna, because I hear what you're saying. We've talked about it with a handful of guys over the year where they're like stat conscious, and you hear them talking about wanting to chase stuff. I wonder with Acuna if there's a correlation between him going for that with durability risk, and then does it just come down to how do you want the profile of your first rounder to be? Do you want it kind of steady?
I know that the first ACL, I think that was on like the bases, right? I specifically remember that like he was like taking like a lead or like rounding second, running. Like he plays the game hard. I understand that.
Yeah.
But
the barrel rate is gaudy, whereas Julio, that's like it hurts to draft a guy who's got like the gray slider barrel rate, right? Where it's just not quite the same. That said, I do think Julio, age 25, it's like you don't know if there might be another step forward. Last year he did make some major improvements on doing damage on off-speed pitches. So just recognize that I think this is
and little things like that, like chase rate, your walk rate.
He cut his strikeout rate last year. Julio did.
That stuff, like that's why age 26, 27, 28, 29 are like these prime seasons for these guys, because it's a blend of, okay, they've been in the league this many years. They know how to pull the ball in the air while also still having this raw, unbelievable athleticism that they kind of just got by on as 22-year-olds, right? So that's what you dream on, like with Julio, right? Like we've seen Acuna's best fantasy season, right? We definitely have. I'd be shocked if we saw 2023 again. Have we seen Julio's best fantasy season?
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably
I don't
not.
know. And I think
right?
I think it's for me. It's a little bit closer to a coin flip, but I'm definitely recognizing that Acuna has the ceiling play. All right, to keep it rolling here, we are
a little
moving
longer
one.
On that one,
I know. We can't help ourselves. We never talk about the first rounders. We have talked a little bit about Kyle Tucker, not as much Fernando Tatis Jr., at least this offseason. Tatis is going at 14 and change, and Tucker is right around 16. So a couple picks difference here for kind of your OF1. And of course, Kyle Tucker moving to the Dodgers. Tatis is, dare we say, falling into this kind of like, certainly not vanilla, but I heard somebody say they're having Vlad fatigue. And I'm like, man, that's when you're getting old, when you get fatigue on guys like Vlad and Tatis and everything. But we did see a tale of two seasons from Tucker last year where, a month in we were saying, oh, is this a season where he could go, best overall in terms of performance. He was running like crazy, and then had some injury stuff in the second half, but also really dropped off. A 738 OPS in the second half versus an 883. And he was running, even on an average basis, probably about a third of the steals that we were seeing in the first half. But he moves to the Dodgers. Elite plate discipline. Then you switch over to Tatis. And yeah, he was one of the guys, Steve, where we're like, it's either going to be he takes a step back or it's going to be otherworldly. And it was just kind of in the middle, where he stayed on the field for 155 games and just had 24 homers, 32 steals, 268 average. Certainly great production, but by his lofty standards, we're kind of expecting, a full season could be a top 5, top 8 player, and it wasn't that. He did cut his strikeout rate, but one thing that jumped out at me was his off speed, what he did, or what he struggled to do against off speed pitches related to like average and strikeouts. It hadn't looked that bad since his rookie year. So kind of a mixed bag for Tatis. I know you've always been a fan and like can't help yourself with Tucker on the Dodgers. Does that change? Where do you fall on this little head to head?
Yeah, I would lean Tucker just because of the lineup context.
Okay.
I love both these guys. Like, I think Tucker, you can clearly point to, okay, this is the injury. This is when it happened. He played through it. It changed the trajectory of his season. Like, the last few years when Kyle Tucker's been on the field, which hasn't been often, he's been, one of the best players in baseball. Like, he looked like he was the MVP of the first few months of last season. I think we talked about this an episode or two ago. As far as Tatis goes, like, it's interesting. Like, there's so many things. It's like, wow, he had an 18.7% strikeout rate. He walked the most of his career. He chased it was the best chase rate of his career. It was the most contact that he's made ever. Best swing strike rate. He played 155 games, the most games of his career by far. Right, the previous high was 141 in 2023. He stole 32 bases, like career high. Still, you would hope for. It was disappointing having 25 homers in that span. Like,
Yeah.
It as good as that was, it was disappointing even for the end of the first round. That said, like, is there a way that he pairs this, strikeout rate with some of the raw power and, a barrel rate of even 14.5% from 2024, right? From 11 last year, like, that does change the game.
Do you
I'm not
still
saying
think, sorry to interrupt, but do you still think Tatis has a higher ceiling than Tucker, or does the lineup context with Tucker like kind of equal a higher fantasy ceiling?
That's a good question. Like, based on like quality of contact, yes. Like, I think that Tatis is more likely to hit 40 homers than
Okay. Yeah.
than Tucker, even as crazy as it is, considering the totals from Tatis's last 3 years are 25, 21, 25, right?
Yeah.
But, Tucker's
I want
also
either of these guys. Like, when I'm looking at the names
yes.
around them, yeah, I
That
would love.
said, for this to sort of cut myself off here and keep us moving along, if both of these guys are available, I'm taking Tucker.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm with you on that.
Okay.
But I would be happy with either. Okay, the next one is a shortstop battle where we're looking at kind of end of the second round, beginning of the third. We have Trea Turner at pick 26 and change, and Zach Neto right around pick 30. So slight edge to Turner on the ADP. Roster Turner last year, Steve, I know I talked to you almost every week about it, that it just grew on me throughout the year.
Yeah.
It felt like the 36 steals were more than I signed up for, which is strange, because for so many years we were like, why with the new base path rules is he not running more? We finally saw it. And that's with him missing all of September. He was definitely on a 40 steal pace, but just 15 homers. So At age 32, it seems like that power has taken a step back. It was the lowest barrel rate since 2018 for Turner. And then you flip to the kind of unheralded Zach Neto, who missed the start of the season. He missed the end of the season. He only played like 125 games. But, you know, I don't know if it was quiet or loud. It definitely was unexpected that we saw him almost have a 30-30 season with 26 homers, 26 steals. 257 average is a big drop off from Trey Turner's 304. And then I think just in general, the, you know, kind of lineup context desert that Neto's in. Do you feel like Turner does have the edge here? Are you interested in these guys? What's your thought on this head to head?
This is the biggest cop out ever. Like, this is the biggest team context battle that I think maybe we have. And I think you just need to take what categorical needs you are lacking at that point. If you need average and more steals, you go Turner. If you want upside, more power, you go Neto.
Is Turner out and out above Neto on steals upside though? Because I feel like Neto is definitely pacing.
Yeah, I would say yes, because they Neto got caught 9 times last year. He got caught 10 times the year before. You know, Turner did get caught 7 times last year, but that was his the most times that he's been caught since 2019 when he stole 43 bases. 2018 when he stole 43 bases and got caught 9 times. So,
good point.
I think there was a stretch where Turner like didn't get caught in like 60 attempts because of the 3 years prior. He got caught 4, 0, and 3 times and had 27, 30, and 19 stolen bases in that span. So, you know, efficiency wise, like I think that maybe as he ages and his power, you know, decreases a little bit, he'll start to make up for that a little bit with the with his legs a little bit. But you know, he is aging. Like that could come at any time. It's also interesting, like the power projections for Turner. Every single projection system has for 17 homers or more. You know, I know that's probably leaning on the last few years where you said 20. But you know,
sub 6% barrel rate, like.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, that does that barrel rate is a little bit depressed because he does put so many balls in play, right?
Sure.
You know, his strikeout rate's been great over the last 2 years. So I think there is maybe a little bit room for upside in the power department for Turner from the 15 home runs. Like if you get another 5 home runs, like that's you know, which is possible, but that would be I think a good way to get a good amount of return for taking Turner, even if he is a second rounder. So cop out there, but team context dependent.
No, I think that's fair. It's an easier path to Turner being a contributor on pop, it seems, than Neto being a contributor on average. Like that,
that's a good
if
point.
he improved the strikeout rate, which was 27% last year, then maybe you could say, okay, Zach Neto's just 25 years old. He's this 30-30 threat. Could he be a 270 hitter? But right now we have like no reason to believe
there's a world where Neto has a rough few months and hits 235 this year, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Sure, like I would still count on 30 homers and probably 25 plus steals, but there's some average downside with Neto for sure, right?
Yep. Okay, well, we got another early round one that we'll shift over to next at first base, but we're going to take our first ad break, and we will be right back after this. Okay, so Steve, the next one is kind of a fun one, talking Bryce Harper and Matt Olson. I know you and I are kind of perpetually in on Olson, which it always seems like he's kind of at the same general ADP. This year it slid back where it used to be kind of a third rounder. Now it looks like it's kind of at the beginning of the 4th round. Bryce Harper is a couple picks before him. But Harper, I feel like we don't talk about as often for some reason. And this year there's a little extra discount there. The drop off last year was on batting average for Harper, where he fell from 285 down to 261, but still 27 homers, 12 steals, 33 years old. So, it's like we were talking about with Acuna, seems really unlikely we're going to see the best season from Harper. You'd say the same about Olson, but it does seem like Olson has just been caught in this Braves bug where, after 2023, when we saw the 283, 54 homer season for Olson, it's like it's been good, but not great. And it seems like that's still in there. Now, Olson did raise his batting average last year from 247 up to 272. So he was kind of a bright spot, a couple of years younger than Harper. Again, I would like, this is an area of first base that I kind of like jumping in on. I'm not sure going into this convo who I would pick. I think it actually might be Bryce Harper, but talk to me about where your head's at with this one.
Yeah, I think the fact that Harper you can kind of pencil him in for 10 steals is a good tiebreaker for me. The quality of contact, as good as Harper's is, if you're looking at just that, the edge sort of goes to Olson, just with the 14 to 16% barrel rates, 13% barrel rates like that. He is going to barrel up the baseball, no matter what. That said, it is kind of disappointing in the fact that he's played 162 games the last 2 years. I'll get to that in a second. And it's been only quote unquote 29 homers, right? That being said, like a little bit of an uptick in home run the fly ball year, and you get, the 54 homers. But that was with a 28% home run the fly ball. If it's 20, you're getting mid to upper 30s, right? And you're pretty happy with that. From Olson. So that's, well within the outcome of range of possibility. Harper, I think the upside for him for homers is like 35, whereas that's closer to, just asking for a 60th percentile outcome for Olson. Right. So
the durability.
And the durability to get into that. Yeah. Olson hasn't missed a game since 2021. His game total has been 156, 162, 162, 162, 162. It's crazy. He just posts.
Well, and Harper is the opposite, man, where it's just like, I think that might be the the reverse tiebreaker versus speed. It's just, when you look at Harper year over year, it's like almost a lock that he's missing on average, like 20 to 25 games.
You got to pencil in an IL stint for Harper, at least, right? Yeah. He hasn't played 150 games since 2019.
Yeah, and you'd like to say, I mean, even if you get, like, I would take the extra 20 games versus the 9 steals. And then I guess you look at batting average, which Harper's been, but even Olson's popped up with these 270, 283 seasons. So I don't know. Maybe I am starting to lean Olson.
Right? Yeah. Look at the runs and RBI total, right?
Yeah.
Like add those two numbers together.
Yeah. For
Harper's
Olson,
consistently at like 130 to like 170.
That's a great point. Olson last year was at like 180, 191 or something, 193.
Yeah. And the lowest that Olson's been in that time is 170.
And that's on some down years for the Braves. So I think accomplished. I've talked myself into saying Olson, even though like Harper would be the more exciting one, just because
he's the name brand. He's more of a name brand in the sense, right? But
I think runs and RBIs are way too often overlooked. So that's a great call, and I think that and the durability is the tiebreaker. Okay, the next one, we're sticking with first base and moving about around back and this is a fun one too. We got Josh Naylor at pick 63 and Freddie Freeman at 64 and change. Man, you could scratch your head at either one of these, but Josh Naylor, I laughed out loud when I heard Frank Stanfield drop. I don't know how I missed the nickname of Thicky Henderson for Josh Naylor, but 30 steals last year to go with a 295 average, 20 homers. That was 1 year removed from him completely flipping where he was a lot more power at 31 homers, but way less batting average, 243 compared to last year's 295. So just bizarre things from Josh Naylor, but almost in a young Bryce Harper sense, it's like he's giving you production. It's just coming in all different shapes and sizes. He does have great plate discipline, like Freddie Freeman, who's on the other side of this. And Freddie is a guy who rostered him last year. It was frustrating. He did have a better second half, and that by the end of the season, you look at a 295 average with 24 homers, 6 steals. Like, it's solid enough. He's one that I want to look at those runs and RBI totals. So 81 runs, 90 RBIs. So it was like, good young Freddie, but it definitely is feeling like at age 36, we're seeing, the B grade Freddie Freeman, whereas Naylor is just this wild card package. Where do you land here?
Freeman, I also rostered Freeman last year. He played on one ankle the entire season. Like, that dude, every time he hit a double, was like gutting it out, limping into second base. The fact that he played as many games as he did at 147 was crazy. So, you would think that's better, but like, he also didn't get surgery. The injury happened in the postseason in 2024, right?
Yeah, and he had that IL stint right away.
Yeah. So like, he had all of the 2024 offseason and still had a bump on ankle in 2025. Is that still going to be the case in 2026? I don't know. That being said, like, he had an 869 OPS, hit 295 with 24 homers on one ankle. Like,
yeah, and he's got
feeling a little better.
Yeah, if it's feeling better, also, a major W in terms of the lineup context and ballpark. Just that, even though Naylor found a way last year, like Seattle traditionally isn't the best place or best lineup context.
And Freddie's one of those guys that, like, you could do his projection, from scratch. You don't need any projection system to project what Freddie Freeman's going to do. Like,
right, 290, 25. Yeah,
I have no idea how to project Josh Naylor. 30 homers,
man.
30 steals, 6 steals, 31 homers, 17 homers. I don't know.
All right.
Is he going to hit 295 or 243? What's his BAB going to be?
I know we got to keep
246.
moving.
I have no
idea.
I've
got to go.
I can't take Naylor.
I got to look at ATC for Naylor. Okay, so they got him at 21 homers, 17 steals, 261 average. So they're literally just averaging out the past couple seasons. Yeah. I mean, if those projections are side by side, I think it's got to be Freddie. So yeah, that's a good one to go through. All right, so moving down the ADP charts a little bit, we're switching back over to outfield, where we've got Byron Buxton coming off of a career year, and Riley Greene coming off of power surge. But even with his 36 homers, we saw just a 258 batting average, whereas and age is a big one for this, right? So at 25 years old for Riley Greene, Byron Buxton, 32 years old, and not exactly the picture of durability. We did see 126 games from him last year, where he had 35 homers and 24 steals with a 264 batting average. So I think a lot of it comes down to whether or not Buxton can stay healthy. But if we were to say, Steve, just for the working assumption that we get 120 games from Buxton, where would you lean between these two guys?
These are guys that, like, if you tell me bits and pieces of their stat line, it's like, this is well documented how much I've liked Riley Greene, probably too much, right, on this show. If you would have told me in 2025 Riley Greene hit 36 homers, like, oh wow, it finally happened. It's like, well, the strikeout rate was the worst of his career. His second half was kind of meh. He only had 258, didn't get on base that much, and had a 121 WRC plus. So, yeah,
major struggles against lefties too for a guy who's that good of a hitter.
If you would have told me Byron Buxton had 35 homers and 24 steals, it's like, oh my God, he finally stayed healthy. Like, this is it. It happened. Yeah, he stayed healthy and he played 126 games. Still missed 40 games. So,
Right.
like
So, yeah, it was a rib cage
yeah,
inflammation, and then what was the other one? There must have been I guess it was just to start the year. So, what did
yeah.
he come in with? Maybe like a hip surgery for Buxton?
I
Yeah,
think
but
that also
yeah, your
made
point's true, though. You're like, "Really? He did all that in 126 games?"
I guess the fact that he stayed mostly healthy after he came back to start the season is that credit to him, he stayed healthy for a significant amount of time, right? I guess
Yeah, but
when
he
was his
missed
first game this year? No, he started the season. He started the season healthy and then what?
the
Missed
rib
game
cage thing, I think, was in the summer,
summer. Okay.
late July, a 10-day
Yeah.
stint.
Okay. And
But then he
then
missed some time in May as well.
okay. So for him, he stayed healthy. Still, it was only
Right,
124
right.
games, 126 games, whatever it is.
So give him 125 games. If you had that versus kind of a
Yeah,
full season of Riley
if you
Greene.
guarantee me 125 games from Buxton, I would take the 125 games of Buxton. Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. So even with the age gap, and I mean, I guess from a batted ball standpoint, as much as we like Riley Greene, like, they're both 96th percentile on barrel rate, right? So
Yeah,
they're
and
both
Buxton is
mashers.
sort
You're
of
getting speed from Buxton as well.
at least the last 2 years, Buxton has sort of shown that he can cut the K rate, hit 265. Be productive in that matter. Hit both handedness. Uh,
Hmm.
gives you more
Yeah.
steam.
Yeah, and he's 32, but he's not like 35. Like,
No, he was 25 for 25 or 24 for 24 on the bases last year.
yeah, he's still a freak
Yeah.
athlete. Okay, so yeah, for what it's worth, I like both of those seem like great. I guess that would be OF twos maybe.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy with either one. I like that in the 70 range.
I
Move
guess
forward.
also
Yeah,
a good point, if you don't have an outfielder at that point, you go Riley, right?
for
Just
stability.
because you need the games.
Yeah, I think if I had an outfielder, I would definitely go Buxton.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. Okay.
But yeah,
Another
I
cop out
like
for
that.
us. There we go.
It is. We're finding them as we go here. Okay, move back another round. Pick 85. We got Drake Baldwin, NL Rookie of the Year. Uh, rapidly makes his way up through the minors and was phenomenal with 19 homers, 80 RBIs in just 124 games. 5 picks after him, you have Salvador Perez. Perez had 30 homers. He keeps doing it. He's 35 years old. It's another age battle. Where do you land on this one, Steve?
I'm gonna punt it to you because I had to make this choice in my most recent draft, my draft and hold on NFBC. I
Okay.
was torn. I needed to make the pick. I'll let you know which way I went after you choose.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I love that you punted it back to me as I'm like choking on Dr. Pepper over here. But well, I will say that our very last show, if you guys missed it, we talked about kind of projection systems, and I liked that Sal Perez popped up in the right spots where the most accurate projection systems for average and homers had him higher than the other systems. So I think even at age 35, and it was a nice, in terms of power output, we did see a 30 homer season from Perez. He still has a sub 20% strikeout rate. I don't love that the batting average slipped from 271 to 236, but the XBA was 269. I know in the early months of the season last year, we kept talking about him as a buy low candidate. So I like Perez. Baldwin, it's like the brain of me, Steve, wants to say, because I like the old man squad anyway, Perez, but I think in the draft room it would be impossible for me to pass on Baldwin because it's the shiny toy. He could be, a 30 home run guy with 275. I think the Braves are well overdue for a bounce back. I don't know. Does he ever run? No. maybe he did in the minors. I think I would go Baldwin, but it's close. And I like both of these names.
I went with Baldwin. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, it's a 10-year age gap between them, so that can be the tiebreaker. Is there anything? I mean, so Baldwin's striking out 15% of the time. Sal Perez 19% of the time. Barrel rate, Sal's at 15%. Baldwin's at 11% or 11%. So, I don't know. And then the hit tool, they're pretty close on like in terms of the batted ball data, but back of the baseball card was rough for Perez. Yeah, I mean, I think if nothing else, it's just it has to the age 36 has to start catching up with him, and all we've seen from Baldwin has been mashing. What if he takes a step forward? So
Perez has proved this wrong every single year. He's pretty consistent. I don't know. I wouldn't have been. I'm not upset either way. I could definitely see an argument for Perez though. There's so much bankable.
So Baldwin's supposed to be hitting cleanup. Sal Perez hitting cleanup. Okay. There's a reason.
I'm buying the Braves bounce back too. I think that's a big part of
another one. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we've got another shortstop battle, and then we're going to talk about another Brave, but it's time for us to take our second ad break. We'll be right back after this. Okay, so Steve, moving on down the ADP list here, we've got a shortstop battle with Bichette and Corey Seager. Bichette's ADP is at 96 and change. Corey Seager, 2 picks behind him there. This one to me, and I'm curious your thoughts on it, but this one to me is not as difficult. I think I'm just starting to be out on Corey Seager. So Bichette, last year we saw a great bounce back where he hit 311. Granted, not a ton of homer steals, but new environment, age 27. Seager, like I've wanted to love like how pure of a hitter he is, and kind of I guess in like a home league, if you make the argument of like I'm getting Corey Seager and then I'm getting whatever his replacement is for stats when he's out, that's an interesting way to kind of spin it. But my thing with Seager is he's played one season since COVID where he's had over 125 games. And it's not just the homers, because last year 102 games he had 21 homers, he hit 270. Like, I get that all things equal, he's a better fantasy contributor than Bichette. My problem is once you get to the runs and RBI, you're looking at like a combined total of 110 last year for Seager, when I think you would say, oh, when he was out there, he was really productive. And then you go to Bichette and his runs and RBIs are like 160 or something. Yeah, 94 RBIs, 78 runs. So it'd be great if Bichette did more than like had any of the sexy home run steal stats, but 18's not nothing. He's not killing you there. And the batting average is a big plus, even on what Seager's done at least the past 2 seasons. Interesting with the Mets. Talk to me about this one. I think I'm leaning Bichette because I've just got fatigue on the 100-game ceiling, it seems like, from Seager.
Yeah, I like Bichette. He, great what he did after bouncing back after that horrific 2024. He sort of was who he was the few years prior. Sure, yeah, we won't ever see that 25 steal upside again, but he was, a 20 homer, good average, paced for always, 90 runs, 90 RBIs, was always on that sort of pace. Really good counting numbers in that sense. So we did a lot of the things that we underrate as fantasy analysts, right? Average, runs, RBIs.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, the homers were a little bit light, but hey, he still hit 24, 20, 18 in the last 3 years when he was relatively healthy, right? And the batted ball contact last year, it was the hard hit rate popped up, the barrel rate was back at 8%. I did see some metrics that he was a little bit unlucky over at based on hard hit and barrel rate and pulled fly ball percentage relative to the league. Um, so maybe there is some more homer upside. I think that City Field and um, Toronto are pretty neutral as far as like right-handed homer power. It might be even leaning towards City Field, so it's not like it's a massive park downgrade for a righty there. And the lineup context should be good. Like I would think Bichette would do. I would project him to do very very similar to what he did um, last year. That
Mm-hmm.
being said, give me Corey Seager. Like yes, I understand the playing time is a liability, but the batted ball quality is just too good for me to pass up. I understand that you probably have to project in 2 IL stints and can't, you have to cap the game projection at 120 like you kind of do with Buxton and couple that with there's no steals, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
Buxton sort of makes up for that because he gives you the 25 steals in that time frame. Seager is not going to do that. That being said, like he is just he's one of the best hitters in the game when he's on the field. I'll keep saying it. It's rare that he's on it, but the everything he does as a hitter, that's what you want. Like if you were to create a hitter in the lab, Corey Seager is like a prototype that you start with.
Sure.
And hey,
Sure.
if there is a little bit of health luck and he does play 130 games, like you're
Look
you're
out.
gonna be
Yeah.
profiting from that, right? It doesn't take much to profit, but it also doesn't take much for him to play 80 games, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at this point in the draft, I know we'll keep coming back to the cop outs, but if you've got speed and you've got a bunch of durable guys, I think you're positioned to take Seager. But if you need that kind of stable batting average, because that's the thing about
Yeah, like, how could you
Bichette's
get
batting
that good of
average.
batting average this late, right? Like, batting
Right.
average is usually such an early round category.
Right,
Um,
and it's
you know
important not to just look at the gap in their batting average as 270 to 300, but it's 300, and I know Seager can be a 300 hitter. We've seen it,
Mhm,
very recently. But when you multiply the batting average over the durability,
sure.
how much is that helping your roto category or week to week? Because whoever
You
you're adding for Seager, there's no guarantee that they're going to hit above 250 either.
you really
But
have
yeah.
to set yourself up to be able to take Seager and sort of take an upside pick.
Hmm.
Bichette is like, "Okay, I kinda leaned upside, like, this is gonna save me a lot of categories,"
A glue
like,
guy.
at this point in the draft, yeah.
Yep, indeed. All right, so the next one is another Atlanta Brave. Michael Harris II, just 24 years old. Feels like we've seen how many of his 2020-ish types of seasons. Um, Still projected to hit like eighth. Is that like almost looping leadoff type of role? But last year it was a step up where we saw a 2020 season. The average continues to fall for him where it was 249 last year after 2 years prior when it was 293. I don't know, man. I haven't been like crazy about Michael Harris since honestly, I think we were both in the year that he
Yeah, I remember
got
texting
called
you when he
up.
got called up, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we just pounced and rode to a half season where he still went 2020 basically. So Michael Harris II, and then right after him is Oneil Cruz, who these guys are both going at pick 100. Oneil Cruz finally did that thing where we were like, oh, it's going to be all or nothing, because we said that 2 years ago and it was kind of middle of the road, same type of Tatis conversation. Last year it was like, oh man, we got the 38 steals, 20 homers, a 200 batting average, and a 32% K rate. So, you really got to hope that it's at least closer to like a 240 average. I mean, he hadn't been abysmal on past seasons. Um, my gut wants to say, and Cruz is also hitting sixth in the lineup, so it's not like he's gonna have a loads more plate appearances than where you're docking MH2 for that. But 27 years old. He's obviously like a physical specimen when it comes to like bat speed and just raw speed. I think I lean Oneil Cruz, Steve, just because both of them are kind of frustrating and have holes, but Oneil Cruz does it with these like video game numbers behind it. But where do you lean on these two, MH2 and Oneil Cruz?
Both these guys made it extremely hard to roster must roster players.
Yeah,
The 58 combined homers and steals for Cruz, a 2020 season, essentially like a lock for that over the last few years. 20 homers, 20 steals for Harris, and a guy that plays good defense and is 25 years old. They make it really, really hard to roster them. Like Cruz was not rosterable at points. Like there was stretches where he just struck out far too much. The average was just debilitating. He played, they still got hurt, right? Like, so
right.
all that sort of stuff. Harris too, like how many slow starts are we gonna have to have? And then he finally comes around. Like, did those homers and steals come on your roster, or did you drop him after his, first few months? Like it's very, very hard to roster these guys, especially like head to head, right? Like they're so streaky. In Roto, it's much easier to deal with.
Just hold your nose and wait for the
Yeah.
swings and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And if there's not really a sign of like, oh, Cruz, cut this, percentage. Like he did, cut his chase rate a little bit, but the swing and cut his swing strike rate, but they're still abysmal. Harris has been on a steady decline. He walked just 2.5% of the time last year, which is just swinging at absolutely everything. That said, like they're at ages where you're not like going to crush them for that or totally write them off because they're still in their, prime as far as like age goes. It's a tough one for me. If I had to choose, I think I would choose Cruz just because I think there's a little bit more upside there.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's Harris. It's like it's still frustrating, and you're wondering what is it that he's like really good at. Like
Yeah.
Cruz, you could dream on like a 30-40 type of season, and then if the average is 250, that's a way better ceiling than Harris. But yeah, between these two, I think my choice is Yuri Perez, 2 picks before them, or some pitcher in that range. So that's probably what my actual drafts will look like. We'll keep it rolling here and go to third base, which is kind of a brutal position. And this is a little bit of last chance saloon at pick 115. You got Eugenio Suarez, of course, with the Cincinnati Reds now, which is a great situation for him because he was great in Arizona and then brutal in Seattle on the round 2. He just really struggles there, it seems, and now finds himself in, a familiar and fantastic homer ballpark. And then, like when you're actually talking the stats, minus the slide in Seattle, or if you weren't paying attention to that, you'd still look at Eugenio and say like he hit 49 homers. Yeah, he hit 228, but this is kind of what you sign up for with him. And then on the flip side, you have Jordan Westburg, who I rostered, and it was such a headache. It felt like he would be back for a week and, have 2 hits and they'd both be home runs, but the batting average be low and then he'd get injured again. Like I've got to go check out how many IL stints he actually had. But yeah, played 85 games, 17 homers was nice, 265 average, kind of nice. But again, he couldn't stay on the field. And the problem is the year before we saw 107 games from him as well. So he's, looking at 2024, it was like a hand fracture. Last year, it was an ankle sprain, another ankle sprain. There were some like phantom stints where he just wasn't playing and there was no update for like 2 or 3 weeks. He is just 26 years old. The underlying stuff that looked really good in 24 didn't look good at all in 25. So I don't know. I mean, the Orioles are a high-powered offense. but I'm kind of leaning Eugenio on this one with the ballpark and just the raw pop. What do you think on this one, Steve?
Westburg dealing with an oblique injury already, right? I think they said he'll be fine, but not going to play in great league games to start. But his opening day is not in jeopardy at all. But not what we want to hear, especially after last year. I get it with Westburg. Like, there's a lot to like. Like the 17 homers in just 85 games, awesome. The quality contact's good. Like he, looks like he's a great power average combination that should be coming into his own. But yeah, the injury stuff is concerning. Um, Suarez, though, like, it's amazing that 6 years after hitting 49 homers in Cincinnati at age 27, he hit 49 homers in Seattle and Arizona. And, essentially has been on a hot streak since the second half of 2024 in Arizona, right? Um, 79 homers combined over the last 2 years.
It's
Insane.
nuts, man.
Cincinnati, familiar, great place to hit. Like, that's hard for me to pass up. So I would go Suarez there as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, so in 2024, he hit 256, Suarez did. It's just a no doubter that he's going to have more in the homer department. And then Westburg, as much as we kind of like the tools, like we haven't really seen like just a straight up back of the baseball card, like great season from Westburg.
No,
of course, he's super young and it's exciting when you look at the Orioles roster, but yeah, I think it's not that far of a wish cast that Eugenio and Westburg's average will be somewhat of a wash. And I think you can count on like at least 1.5 times the power output from Eugenio. Wanted to give a quick look because they got Westburg slotted at second in that order. And Eugenio, what do you think? He's hitting fourth, fifth? They've got him at fourth right now behind Friedel, Noel V, Ellie, and then Sal Stewart behind him, which is a fun name as well. So, okay, that's Suarez and Westburg. This one, Steve, man, I don't know. Talking about volatility, a couple picks later, immediately after them, the ADP list goes Suarez, Westburg, and then an outfield right after them. You have Joe Adell and Luis Robert Jr. Call it recency bias, but I'm going Joe Adell on this one. Maybe there's a little more of new lease on life optimism for Robert out your way in New York, Steve, but I just don't know what to point to where I think Adell, we saw, big gains. I get that Robert was, he's had better seasons in the majors, but they both came in as really hyped prospects. So I think I'd rather have the one that just had a 30 plus homer season and seems to be making improvements in certain areas like the strikeout rate and all that stuff. But yeah, would you fight me on that and go Robert?
Yeah, I'm going Robert. I really like this pickup for Mets. It was a great cost. Didn't cost him that much at all. He plays every day when he's in the lineup because of his elite defense. There was some improvement in the strikeout rate, right? And still, even last year in what was a horrible year, he had 14 homers and 33 steals. And, I know the 233 average is unsightly, but hey, there's a bit to like in projecting some batting average upside, considering that, there was some plate discipline improvements. It was the second best swing strike rate of his career. The best chase rate of his career, the best contact rate of his career. And he had a 274 BABIP. He never had a BABIP below 310 prior to that. Like, he got unlucky on average and still hit 14 homers and 33 steals in 110 games. Like, if that was a 240 number, like you'd be looking at Robert as a totally different type of player. Yeah. On top of that, he also walked the most of his career. So I think that there is a higher ceiling for Robert, and I think Adell, you kind of have to hope for a repeat, which it's possible, and it was good. The 37 homers, really good. Like played 152 games, great. But it still seemed like that was a 90th percentile outcome um for Adell, and then Robert's 90th percentile outcome, I think, is like
An all-star.
30,
Yeah.
30, 260 all-star. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I like about Adell is that it looked like he made some serious improvements in terms of like the different types of pitches that he could do damage on, where for a long time it was kind of, middling across the board.
Yeah.
Last year we saw like, a respectable, if not really good slug percentage against fastballs, breaking balls, off speed. It is a good point though that even with the struggles for Robert, the batting average on these two is a wash, and the speed for Robert is up there. I mean,
Mhm.
Adell's hitting earlier in the lineup, but I'm kind of curious if it starts clicking for Robert, what would keep him from, after you go through Lindor, Soto, Bichette, that 4 through, because they got Robert slotted at 8th in the order, but you've got like Jorge Polanco, Marcus Semien, Brett Beatty. I don't know, and maybe some of the what's normally like New York pressure would flip for Robert just because he's been in such a bad
Yeah.
headspace.
Yeah.
Um,
He's basically been like
okay.
traded for 2 years prior to this, right? Like,
Right, right.
one of those years was with the worst team like ever.
Mhm.
It can't be a good environment uh to be around.
Yeah, I think of all the ones we've talked about so far, this one to me, I'll watch closest in spring to just see. It's like the vibe check, and
Yeah.
what's the plate discipline looking like for both of them. Um, is Robert? If Robert does anything in the spring, I do think his ADP could
Yeah.
get some helium.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good one there. Another outfield one that is a little bit later at pick 146 is Jakob Marsee, and 148 is Lawrence Butler. It kind of came crashing down for Butler last year after he was, really promising kind of industry darling in the 60 to 70 range on ADP. He had a brutal second half, whereas Jakob Marsee, who we've talked about quite a bit on the show, but once he got introduced, he came up and was just running like crazy. His steals projections look really good for the year. I think it's like high 30s. And last year, the delight for Marsee was he had a 292 batting average, where he was more like a 250 hitter in the minors. Barrel rate was middling. Lawrence Butler, I guess you have to kind of talk yourself into um, why we'd be excited again, because in 2024 we saw really good like quality of contact, underlying metrics. It looked like the 2020 260 was a little bit of the floor because he didn't play that much. And then last year we did see a 2020 season, but all the batted ball data kind of came back, down to reality, kind of middle of the pack, and a 232 batting average. Still young though. Both of these guys, Marsee 24, Butler 25. They're kind of upside darts. I think I lean Marsee, but we haven't seen a ton of him. And Butler, we do have a couple seasons now where he's kind of hovering in Michael Harris II territory. But what are your thoughts on this one, Steve?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I do want to believe in a bit of a bounce back for Butler. Like, yes, a lot of that stuff under the hood uh, regressed
Mm-hmm.
a good amount after, there was a lot of reason to believe in, the improvement, or he could build upon his rookie year, right? Because those numbers backed up that performance.
And it was a huge second half, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah,
2024, everyone was like, if this is actually who he is, he could be a 30, 30,
yeah.
280 guy or something.
That said, he took his lumps. He, got such 630 plate appearances and went 2020. Like, there could the progression isn't always linear, right? Like there could be that bump could come just a bit later than we hoped. And I think there's demonstrated quality of contact, even if it is the year before that we know is in there. That I don't know if that's in there with Marsee, just because the hard hit rate, the barrel rate, the quality contact, the bat speed is not what Butler's is. But Marsee does a lot of other things really well. He doesn't strike out. He doesn't chase. He squares up the ball. He, gets the ball in the sweet spot a lot. Probably is a lock for a higher average. Hit lefties well in a small sample. That said, like there could easily be, I could easily see Marsee falling into platoon more so than Butler can. So I'd actually, as much as I like Marsee, I'd actually think that I lean Butler here. Just kind of believe in a bit of a bounce back, even though I think he did, hold his own at least overall as a fantasy player last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the projections are interesting because they got Marsee coming way down from the 292 to his batting average kind of median is like 230 on projections. That's rough.
Yeah.
Both of them are projected for pretty solid runs and RBIs, but Marsee's supposed to be leading off. Butler is supposed to be like hitting 7th or 8th.
I like the
And
A's
then
lineup better though than the
then the
Marlins, right?
Marlins. Yeah, it's a good point. But yeah, Marsee, like the low to mid-teens homers, and then almost all the projection models have him at like 35 steals. So I think you're probably just getting a different type of player.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I lean Marsee, but I like Butler too. And I do think that Butler is kind of an interesting draft this, not that on Michael Harris. So yeah, good one there. Last one we're rounding out with is more of a corner infield one, because we've got Jonathan Arranda at first base, and then Royce Lewis, who I had to double check and make sure that he was really just 26 years old. It's a shame. I would love to see, like, I think we all would see a full season of Royce Lewis, but Arranda is going at pick 185. Royce Lewis is going at pick 183. So for corner infield guys here, I know my pick, Steve. I'm pretty firm on Arranda. I think we saw like a pretty exciting mini breakout last year where he hit 316 with 14 homers, and that was just in 100 games, and hit lefties and righties really well before I think he like broke his wrist. Yeah, on August 1st. So I'm excited about Arranda. I think not only is it the pop, but also the guy like takes a walk. He hits the ball really well in terms of like contact, in addition to power. Like that is all just really exciting. And Royce Lewis, I just don't know what we're getting. I mean, it's kind of a way worse version of the Acuna question earlier of like, okay, you can point to the fact that he had 12 steals, but do we want Royce Lewis pushing it on the base paths if it means he's going to top out at 100 games? And then, none of the batted ball metrics jump out for Royce Lewis the way that they do for Arranda. But what do you think here? Any pushback, or do you think Aranda's the choice?
Yeah, I think I would lean Arranda. That those first few months of the season were very, very exciting, and there was all that data to back it up, right? Fully believe that. That said, like we've seen Royce Lewis go scorched earth for a bit. And there was, a good amount of hype on him for 2 seasons now. I get that it's basically essentially given up now, and you have to squint to see that upside, but you never know. That said, yeah, I'm leaning around. I think it's at this cost, like a pretty projectable power speed upside here that is not not too costly. Like that's hard to pass up at this point, and you kind of have to hit a hit a Hail Mary with Royce Lewis. Like
Yeah, exactly.
if you may be more right with Lewis if you take him and things go right, but you're probably more wrong, if that makes any bit of sense.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's so you mentioned the scorched earth. in 2023 when he had the 58 games and 15 homers, 6 steals, and hit 309. I mean, that is the ultimate.
2024 to start too, right? That it was also an insane run, right? And then he got hurt.
Yeah, what was let me look at that. In 2024, so he was out until June, but
Okay,
in the
and then when
month
he
of
came
June,
back,
in the
yeah.
month of June was 9 homers, 279, 72.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. So
We're also talking about
Arranda,
like 2 months, right? Like we're
exactly.
talking about
Yeah.
2 months.
And Arranda's not void of upside. It's just, yeah, with Royce
I mean, we're
Lewis,
also
it's
kind of
like,
talking about 2 months for Arranda too, right? Like it was 2.5 months of really good stuff there. So
yeah, but I
you know,
feel like going into last year, there was some excitement on what Arranda could do.
yeah,
So,
that's true. Yeah.
but I know what you mean. Yeah, there's a lot of it's interesting that this exercise was just off of side by side ADP, but there are a few of these that have been like pretty high risk reward
Yeah.
type of guys. You know what I mean? Or like so Naylor, we're like, how do we project him? Buxton, it's like, okay, what is the playing time looking like? Baldwin, I think, is a little bit safer, even though it's small sample size. But then Seager, a lot of it came down to, you know, what kind of health. Oneil Cruz is a total wild cards. Westburg. So I think the idea is don't draft all of those guys on the same team. But I like there's some really I think the big lesson is for me is from pick like 90 to 160, there's a lot of kind of if you're risk tolerant, some lottery tickets that are interesting. Like there's a handful of those guys could be like top 40 players if a few things click in their direction. So yeah, interesting show for sure. How many of these guys do you have rostered already, Steve? You said Baldwin.
I have Baldwin. I think that might be it, honestly.
Shopping for pitching in these parts.
Yeah, and I think just sort of the way my draft went. I like when did I take some outfield? I waited a bit for outfielders more than I would have liked.
Of the names we've talked about, the ones I
Yeah.
could picture me like, let's say past, well, I guess Buxton and those guys are still in the 70s. I think past pick 100, which was like the MH2 Oneil Cruz, the guys that we talked about that I see myself drafting are probably Eugenio, Marsee, or Butler,
Yeah.
and then Arranda. I don't think I'm gonna be in on Lewis. I mean, it's the Robert Adell is, I guess, if I can afford like a dart and I need a, you know, OF2 or OF3. But yeah, are any of the names after Bichette, Seager jump out as ones that you're like actively targeting? You
I
seemed
like
in
Robert.
on Robert.
I like
Yeah.
Robert a lot.
Okay.
It looks like I like Lawrence Butler, and Arranda I think is a good call that I wasn't necessarily targeting, but
Okay.
I think there is a good upside there.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. It's good to be back talking baseball. And yeah, in the meantime, you guys can reach out to us on Twitter at WinsBubPod. Got the new cover photo. Shout out to the Pitcherless Squad. And yeah, if you guys got any topics or players you guys want us to break down, happy to do it. Otherwise, that wraps us up for episode 203, ADP Position Battles. Thanks for talking baseball with us.
Thanks, guys. Later.